In the dark corners of a cruel plantation, one man's hammer held more than fire and metal. It held the power of freedom. Bound by chains, forced to forge weapons for the very hands that enslaved him, he carried a secret spark of rebellion that could change the lives of dozens. If you want to uncover hidden tales of courage and rebellion like this, subscribe to Hidden Tales, hit the bell, and join a community that brings forgotten stories of heroism to light. Every view, every share helps keep history's hidden voices alive. The early morning sun barely reached the windows of the Waverly Plantation workshop, but the heat inside made the air shimmer. Smoke rose from the forge as the enslaved blacksmith, Elijah Brandt, struck the glowing metal with precise, thunderous blows. Each hammer strike rang out, a rhythm of obedience, yet beneath it lay the heartbeat of a man plotting resistance. Elijah had been born into servitude, his small hands learning the craft of metalwork under the watchful eyes of overseers. They thought they were shaping him to serve them forever, to forge tools, weapons, and shackles for the very hands that oppressed him. But every strike of the hammer was more than metalwork. It was practice, preparation. It was the shaping of a secret weapon, a tool that could unlock freedom for many. The plantation owner, Master Waverly, prided himself on his cruelty. He would walk into the forge without warning, scrutinizing Elijah's work with sharp eyes. "Faster. Stronger," he barked. "Do you think my men have the patience for mistakes?" Elijah said nothing, his jaw tight, veins pulsing with anger beneath the surface. Every order was a command to create, but also an opportunity to build what nobody else could imagine. Hidden within the edges of swords, the hollows of hammers, and the grooves of plow tools, Elijah was forging the keys to freedom. When night fell and the overseers were gone, Elijah worked by candlelight, carefully crafting something unique. A small, seemingly ordinary tool, perfectly balanced, strong enough to pry open locks or remove bars quietly, a tool that would one day let dozens slip through chains that had bound them for years. Days turned into weeks, and whispers began to circulate among the enslaved workers. Strange sparks flew in the darkness, odd shapes were hidden in carts leaving the forge, and subtle signs hinted that Elijah was planning more than just blacksmith work. Some feared the consequences if he were caught. Some dared to hope. He watched Master Waverly carefully. The man was arrogant, proud of his wealth and control, blind to the idea that his own blacksmith was quietly orchestrating rebellion under his nose. Every glance, every command, Elijah memorized and used to anticipate movements. He needed precision. One mistake could cost him his life and ruin the entire plan. Late one night, Elijah tested the prototype tool in secret. It worked flawlessly. Locks clicked open silently. Shackles fell away without a sound. Heart racing, he imagined the enslaved men and women, families torn apart, finally stepping out into the night, free. The risk was enormous. If discovered, Master Waverly would execute him in the most brutal way imaginable. But Elijah's determination was a fire that could not be quenched. He had witnessed too many lives destroyed, too many souls broken. The cruelty had to end. By the time dawn approached, Elijah had hidden a small batch of the secret tools in a crate marked for delivery to another plantation. Tonight, dozens of enslaved people would attempt escape. Tonight his plan would be tested. The tension was unbearable. He moved silently through the quarters, whispering instructions to trusted allies. Each step carried danger, each movement calculated. If he faltered, all would be lost. But when the first group crept into the woods under the cover of darkness, guided by Elijah's tools, he felt a surge of hope stronger than fear. The night air was heavy with anticipation. The sounds of the forest, wind rustling leaves, distant owls, the occasional crack of a branch, seemed magnified. Each shadow could be an overseer, each footstep a threat. But Elijah's design worked perfectly. Shackles clicked open silently. Doors creaked quietly. The group moved through the woods without alarm, guided by the tools and the silent instructions he had whispered. Elijah watched from the shadows, heart pounding, every nerve alert. This was his first real victory, and it was only the beginning. He returned to the forge, knowing that he had to prepare for the next wave. Freedom would not come easily, but with skill, courage, and cunning, he could change the lives of dozens, and perhaps more. The following days at Waverly Plantation were tense. Elijah moved among the other enslaved workers with the calm demeanor of a man who had mastered patience. Each swing of the hammer, each bend of iron, each measured breath was calculated. Master Waverly roamed the forge, inspecting the progress of his prized blacksmith, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. The tools Elijah had secretly crafted had already enabled a small number of enslaved workers to escape under the cover of darkness. News of their disappearance reached the quarters quietly. Whispers of hope and fear passed from person to person. Elijah listened carefully, noting who could be trusted, who would falter under pressure, and who carried the courage to see his plan through. He began teaching a select few, showing them subtle techniques in metalworking that masked the true purpose of the tools. A seemingly ordinary hammer, once handled correctly, could dismantle shackles and locks. A simple wedge, carefully shaped, could pry open doors without leaving a trace. It was ingenuity born of necessity. Every movement, every instruction was hidden in plain sight. Master Waverly's cruelty intensified with the first rumors of escape. He summoned overseers, demanding tighter control, longer hours, and harsher punishments. Yet paradoxically, it worked in Elijah's favor. The overseers' focus on fear and intimidation blinded them to the subtle operations happening in the forge. Elijah's hands moved faster, his mind sharper, calculating risks and mapping paths for those he sought to free. One night, he walked quietly through the quarters, a small crate balanced in his hands. Inside were the latest batch of tools. He approached a group of workers huddled in the shadows, young men and women, trembling but eager. "Tonight," he whispered, "we reclaim what they have stolen from us. Tonight we move." They followed Elijah's lead into the forest, the tools concealed against their bodies. Every sound of snapping twig or rustling leaf could signal disaster, yet the group moved with a mix of fear and determination that pushed them forward. Elijah had studied the landscape meticulously, noting every creek, every tree, every path that could lead them to safety. As they approached the first line of fences, he stopped, crouching low. His hands worked quickly, using a wedge and a small lever to open the lock silently. One by one the workers slipped through. Elijah's heartbeat thumped in his chest like the rhythm of a war drum. The operation was flawless. But the night was not without danger. A patrol had altered its route, rounding the corner faster than expected. Elijah's eyes caught movement in the darkness. He signaled the group to hide in the underbrush. Sweat and adrenaline mingled as the patrol passed mere feet from them. Every second felt like an eternity. Once the danger had passed, Elijah led the group deeper into the forest, toward the first safe house he had meticulously mapped months earlier. By dawn, the first wave of escapees reached freedom. Elijah watched from a distance, his chest tight with pride and anxiety. He knew Master Waverly would discover the absence of so many workers soon. Retaliation was inevitable. And yet, hope, a fragile, precious spark, had been lit. Back at the forge, Elijah worked tirelessly. He had to prepare for the next wave. Each tool he crafted, each subtle modification was a lifeline. His hands bore calluses, burns, and scars, yet he wielded his hammer like a weapon, a symbol of resistance. Word spread quietly through sympathetic networks, towns, churches, and safe houses that supported runaway slaves. Elijah's plan was no longer just an isolated act of defiance. It was becoming a movement. Families separated, children stolen, elders enslaved. All were touched by his ingenuity. Master Waverly, furious and bewildered, scoured the plantation. He punished those left behind with brutality, hoping fear would quell the whispers of rebellion. But the spark Elijah had ignited could not be extinguished. Each act of escape, each tool delivered, each life freed added momentum to the growing resistance. In the forge, Elijah paused, hammer poised over glowing iron. He stared into the fire, imagining the faces of those he had yet to free. He thought of mothers reunited with children, of fathers walking beside sons and daughters once lost to cruel owners. Each strike of the hammer, each careful shaping of metal, was a promise. Freedom would come and justice would follow. The months that followed were a blur of fire and steel, secrecy and strategy. Elijah Brandt's reputation among the enslaved workers had grown. Whispers of the blacksmith who freed dozens spread quietly across plantations and quarters, carried from one sympathetic hand to another. But with recognition came greater danger. Master Waverly had hired men to track missing slaves, and patrols increased, their cruelty escalating as frustration mounted. Elijah's workshop became a fortress of hidden purpose. Every hammer, every anvil, every piece of metalwork was crafted with precision, dual purpose, and a clandestine mission. Ordinary tools became instruments of liberation. Hammers with hidden wedges, pliers that could open shackles, and tiny, cleverly designed picks capable of sliding through bars and locks. Each piece was tested secretly at night, under the faint glow of lanterns, ensuring it could be wielded by those desperate for freedom without drawing attention. Despite the danger, Elijah moved among the workers with calm authority. Young men and women who had never known liberty trusted him implicitly. He taught them subtle techniques, not only in using the tools but in reading the plantation layout, understanding guard rotations and anticipating the movements of overseers. His instructions were never overt. Each lesson was hidden in plain sight, disguised as routine training or improvement of everyday metalwork. One night, Elijah crept into the quarters, where a group of men and women huddled nervously. Their eyes reflected fear and hope, a combination that he had learned to harness. "Tonight," he whispered, "we strike a blow for ourselves and those who come after us. We move as one. We move in silence. And we move with the tools I have given you. No chains can hold us tonight." They slipped into the shadows, clutching the hidden implements of freedom. The forest surrounding Waverly Plantation was alive with sound. The rustle of leaves, the occasional snapping twig, the distant call of an owl. Every footfall was a calculated risk, every breath measured. Elijah led the way, alert to every movement, every shadow, every possibility of discovery. As they approached the first barrier, a thick iron gate guarding the eastern quarters, Elijah knelt, the tool in his hand gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Within moments, the lock clicked open. The group slipped through, holding their breath as the patrol moved past the far edge of the property. One misstep could mean death. Yet every lock opened, every shackle fell silently, and the group moved deeper into the forest with hearts pounding and spirits lifted. In the early hours of the morning, the first wave of fugitives reached a safe house, a modest cabin hidden among trees miles from Waverly Plantation. There they were greeted by allies, free black families, sympathetic whites, and others who had long supported those fleeing the chains of slavery. Each person they rescued was given food, clothing, and guidance, and then sent further north toward freedom. Meanwhile, Elijah returned to the forge, weary but unbroken. He knew more would come, more escape attempts, more plans, more risks. Each day he worked, he refined the tools further. Even the smallest adjustments mattered. A sharper edge, a longer reach, a subtle bend. These were not mere implements, they were lifelines. Master Waverly's frustration reached a fever pitch. He had not anticipated the cunning and ingenuity of a single blacksmith, a man he considered property. The plantation's morale faltered as the number of disappearances increased. Overseers were punished, chains tightened, and fear was spread, but the slaves had learned caution, preparation, and trust under Elijah's guidance. By the time the third wave of escapees made it safely through the plantation, Elijah had developed a network of communication, signals, hidden messages, and coded instructions. Every crate, every forged object, every whispered word carried meaning. Through these methods, dozens more gained freedom. Each success strengthened the resolve of the enslaved workers and cemented Elijah's legend. One evening, as he shaped metal by the forge, Elijah thought of the faces he had saved. Mothers reunited with children, fathers walking beside sons they had not seen in years, families that had been broken but were now whole. The fire reflected in his eyes, revealing both exhaustion and unyielding determination. He understood the risk. One misstep, one betrayal, and the consequences would be dire. But the thought of freedom, true, unbound liberty, was worth any cost. By the fall of that year, Elijah Brandt's reputation had become more than a whisper among the enslaved communities. It was a legend. Tales of the blacksmith who had outwitted the cruel Master Waverly spread quietly from plantation to plantation, carried by the few who had witnessed or heard of his ingenuity. Yet with notoriety came heightened danger. Overseers became more vigilant, patrols more aggressive, and the punishments more brutal for those suspected of conspiring with him. Elijah knew that fear alone could never stop him. It was preparation, strategy, and intelligence that would ensure his mission's success. He had spent years studying locks, doors, and gates, memorizing the movements of guards and understanding the psychology of cruelty. Every tool he forged in the fire of his workshop had a secret purpose, every hammer blow a step closer to liberation. The blacksmith's workshop had become a labyrinth of secrecy. Ordinary objects hid extraordinary potential. A simple wedge could pry chains apart, a forged pin could unlock doors without a sound, and hollowed hammers contained implements capable of opening shackles silently. Elijah's genius lay not just in his skill with metal, but in his ability to think like those who sought to control him. One night, under the cover of darkness, Elijah gathered a group of men and women who had proved their courage and trustworthiness. "Tonight," he said quietly, "we change our fates. Remember your training. Use your tools. Move as one. And above all, remain silent. Freedom is not given, it is taken with courage and precision." The group moved through the shadows, muscles tense, hearts pounding, guided by Elijah's careful instructions. The forest beyond the plantation was thick and foreboding, every step an exercise in stealth. Leaves whispered beneath their feet, insects buzzed in the humid air, and the occasional distant cry of an animal reminded them of the wilderness's constant vigilance. They reached the first line of defense, a reinforced iron gate, thick and rusted. Elijah knelt, tool in hand, working with meticulous care. Within moments, the mechanism yielded. The group slipped through, holding their breath as the night around them seemed to hold its own suspense. Patrols passed dangerously close, yet thanks to Elijah's foresight and preparation, every step was calculated, every movement precise. As they moved deeper into the forest, the escapees encountered small rivers, uneven terrain, and natural obstacles. Elijah had anticipated all these challenges. He led them with quiet authority, pointing out safe paths, hidden crevices, and dry patches of land. His knowledge of the land and timing of patrols became a lifeline. By dawn, another group of fugitives reached a safe house miles away, where allies greeted them with food, water, and guidance. These safe houses were not mere shelters. They were part of a larger network Elijah had cultivated, a web of resistance stretching across the region. Every successful escape emboldened those still trapped, spreading hope like wildfire. Meanwhile, Master Waverly's frustration and rage escalated. He could not comprehend how a single blacksmith whom he considered property had managed to outwit him repeatedly. Punishments intensified, overseers were forced into tighter schedules, and the entire plantation lived under a cloud of fear. Yet Elijah's strategy adapted constantly. Every patrol, every guard shift, every change in routine was accounted for. One evening, as he rested by the forge, Elijah reflected on the lives he had touched. Mothers reunited with children, fathers guiding sons to safety, young women and men reclaiming their freedom. These were the rewards that no whip, no punishment, no overseer could take away. His body bore scars, his hands were calloused and burned, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Every tool he forged, every escape he guided, every plan executed successfully was a testament to his skill, courage, and relentless determination. Elijah knew that the final phase of his plan would be the most dangerous. He intended to free a large group in a coordinated effort, relying on every ounce of knowledge, every hidden tool, and every ally he had cultivated over the months. Failure was unthinkable, yet he faced it with the calm precision of a master craftsman. The night of the final operation arrived. Elijah Brandt had spent months preparing for this moment, meticulously planning every detail. The largest group of enslaved workers yet would attempt escape from Waverly Plantation, and every step had to be flawless. His hands, scarred and calloused from years at the forge, trembled slightly with anticipation, but his mind was sharp, focused, and unyielding. By dusk, the group gathered silently near the edge of the forest. Children clutched their siblings, mothers whispered reassurances, and men adjusted their tools, each one carefully crafted by Elijah's hands. The air was thick with tension, the kind that seemed to press against the lungs, yet hope glimmered in every eye. Elijah took a deep breath and gave the signal. They moved as one, shadows slipping through darkness like ghosts, guided by the blacksmith who had turned fire and steel into instruments of freedom. At the first barricade, a massive iron gate reinforced with multiple locks, Elijah knelt and produced the secret tool he had perfected. His hands moved with practiced precision, opening each lock silently, a symphony of skill and patience. The group slipped through one by one, hearts pounding, eyes wide, every nerve alert to the slightest sound. The forest seemed alive, every leaf, branch, and shadow a potential threat. But Elijah's foresight had accounted for every contingency. The patrols were the most dangerous challenge. Waverly had doubled their numbers, their eyes sharp and suspicious. Yet through careful timing and quiet maneuvers, the group moved past undetected. Elijah had taught them to read the forest, to listen to the rhythm of footsteps, to anticipate the dangers and adjust on the fly. Every success, every small victory reinforced their courage and resolve. By midnight, the largest group yet had crossed the plantation boundary and entered the first network of safe houses Elijah had mapped out. Families were reunited, tears of relief and joy flowing freely, and gratitude etched into every face. For Elijah, it was not just a victory, it was the culmination of years of careful planning, patience, and unwavering determination. He had turned his suffering into a force for liberation. The aftermath on Waverly Plantation was chaos. Master Waverly raged, his authority undermined repeatedly by a blacksmith he considered property. Overseers were humiliated, punishments were more brutal, yet nothing could undo the work Elijah had accomplished. The enslaved workers who remained looked to him with awe and quiet hope, understanding that freedom was no longer an impossible dream but a tangible possibility. Elijah returned to his forge one final time, hammer in hand, fire casting deep shadows across his rough, scarred face. Each tool he had created, every piece of metal he had shaped, was a testament to resilience and cunning. He looked toward the forest, imagining the lives now free, families reunited, and the ripple effect that would carry forward through the years. The forge, once a place of servitude, had become a crucible of rebellion, and Elijah had emerged as a silent hero whose deeds would echo far beyond the walls of Waverly Plantation. He knew the fight for freedom was ongoing. There would always be those who sought to oppress, to dominate, and to break the human spirit. Yet Elijah's legacy had been forged in fire, metal, and courage, proof that skill, determination, and ingenuity could outmatch cruelty and oppression. As dawn broke, Elijah stepped outside, the first rays of sunlight glinting off the remnants of his tools, and whispered to himself, "Freedom is never given. It is claimed." If you want to uncover more hidden tales of courage, rebellion, and survival, subscribe to Hidden Tales, hit the notification bell, and join a community that brings history's forgotten heroes to light. Every view, every share, and every comment helps keep these stories alive.